Welcome to the Sleepy Historian. Tonight, we journey back to one of the world's oldest lost civilizations, the Indus Valley. Imagine, if you will, a warm, dusky evening beside a wide and winding river. Its waters glide slowly past fields of wild barley, whispering softly against the earth as they have for thousands of years. The year is around 3,300 BCE. The last rays of the sun slip behind distant hills, casting golden shadows across the land, a land where life moves gently in rhythm with the river's flow. Along the banks, quiet figures tend to small fires, their silhouettes flickering in the twilight. The air carries the earthy scent of roasted grain and wood smoke, drifting skyward in still vertical columns. Cranes cry faintly overhead, circling back to their roosts as night begins its quiet descent. Children laugh in hushed tones, their bare feet kicking up dust as they chase one another near the water's edge. Soon they will settle beside their families, beneath a canopy of stars that has watched over this valley for millennia. The Indus Valley, vast, mysterious, and nearly forgotten, is about to reveal its story. The story begins, as so many great stories do, with the slow and patient work of human hands, learning to coax life from the earth. In the rolling hills and fertile valleys of what is now Pakistan and northwestern India, small groups of hunter-gatherers began to settle in one place, drawn by the promise of wild grains that grew in abundance and the reliable flow of rivers that never ran dry. These were the first tentative steps toward something that had never existed before in human history. The deliberate cultivations of crops, the domestication of animals, and the establishment of permanent settlements that would endure for generations. The transition from hunting and gathering to farming was not sudden or dramatic. It unfolded slowly, over centuries, as people learned through trial and error which plants could be encouraged to grow larger and more abundantly, which animals could be tamed and bred, and which locations offered the best combination of fertile soil, fresh water, and natural protection from floods and storms. The process required patience, observation, and a willingness to invest time and effort in activities whose rewards might not be realized for months or even years. In the foothills of the Baluchistan Mountains, where the land begins its gentle descent toward the Indus Plain, early settlers discovered that wild wheat and barley grew in such profusion that they could be harvested in quantities sufficient to feed entire communities throughout the year. But these wild grains were scattered across the landscape, their seeds small and prone to shattering at the touch, making them difficult to gather and store. Through careful selection and patient cultivation, these early farmers gradually encouraged the development of larger, more stable grains that remained attached to their stalks until deliberately harvested. The process of domestication extended beyond plants to include animals as well. Wild goats and sheep, originally hunted for their meat and hides, were gradually brought under human control through selective breeding and careful management. These animals provided not only meat, but also milk, wool, and leather, creating a more diverse and reliable foundation for human survival. Water buffalo, whose descendants would later become essential to Indus Valley agriculture, were also brought under human control during this period, their strength harnessed for the heavy work of ploughing and harvesting. The development of agriculture required new tools and techniques. Stone implements, carefully shaped by skilled craftsmen, were designed specifically for the tasks of farming. Sickles for harvesting grain, grinding stones for processing seeds, and storage containers for preserving food throughout the year. These tools, discovered in archaeological excavations throughout the region, tell the story of a people learning to master their environment through ingenuity and persistence. The earliest farming settlements in the Indus Valley region were small, consisting of perhaps a few dozen families living in simple structures made from locally available materials. Houses were typically constructed from sun-dried mud bricks with flat roofs supported by wooden beams. These dwellings were arranged in loose clusters around common areas where grain was processed and stored, and where craftsmen worked on the tools and implements necessary for daily life. As agriculture became more successful and reliable, these settlements began to grow in size and complexity. Surplus food production allowed some members of the community to specialize in activities other than farming, leading to the development of specialized crafts and the beginnings of trade between different communities. Pottery, in particular, became increasingly sophisticated, with skilled artisans creating vessels not only for practical purposes, but also for ceremonial and decorative uses. The pottery of these early farming communities reveals a great deal about their daily lives and cultural practices. Vessels were made in a variety of shapes and sizes, each designed for specific purposes: large storage jars for grain, smaller containers for water and other liquids, and cooking pots designed to withstand the heat of cooking fires. The decoration of these vessels evolved over time, with geometric patterns and stylized representations of animals and plants becoming increasingly common and sophisticated. The social organization of these early farming communities was relatively simple, based primarily on kinship relationships and cooperative labor. Extended families worked together to cultivate their fields, share in the harvest, and maintain the common infrastructure of the settlement. Leadership was likely informal, based on age, experience, and the respect of one's neighbors, rather than on formal positions of authority or inherited status. Trade between settlements began to develop as different communities specialized in the production of particular goods. Communities located near sources of stone or mineral deposits might specialize in tool-making, while those in areas particularly suited to agriculture might focus on food production. This early trade was conducted through direct exchange, with goods changing hands as part of ongoing relationships between neighboring communities. The expansion of agriculture in the Indus Valley region was facilitated by the development of irrigation techniques that allowed farmers to bring water to fields that were not naturally flooded by rivers. Simple channels and ditches were dug to direct water from rivers and streams to cultivated areas, extending the amount of land that could be successfully farmed. These early irrigation systems were the predecessors of the sophisticated water management systems that would later characterize the great cities of the Indus Valley Civilization. The success of agriculture in the region was also dependent on the natural flooding patterns of the Indus River and its tributaries. Each year, Seasonal rains and snowmelt in the mountains would cause the rivers to overflow their banks, depositing rich silt across the surrounding plains. This annual flooding provided natural fertilization for the soil and replenished the water table, creating ideal conditions for agriculture. Early farmers learned to time their planting and harvesting to take advantage of these natural cycles, developing a deep understanding of the rhythms of the land that would be passed down through generations. As agricultural techniques became more sophisticated and settlements grew larger, the foundation was laid for the development of more complex forms of social organization. The reliable food surpluses produced by successful farming allowed for the support of specialized craftsmen, traders, and eventually administrators and religious leaders. The stage was set for the emergence of the world's first urban civilizations, of which the Indus Valley would be among the most remarkable and enduring. The transformation from scattered farming villages to organized towns and cities was a gradual process that unfolded over many generations. As agricultural surpluses grew and trade networks expanded, some settlements began to emerge as regional centers, attracting craftsmen, traders, and administrators who served the needs of the surrounding agricultural communities. These emerging urban centers were characterized by more sophisticated architecture, planned layouts, and evidence of social stratification and specialized occupations. The site of Mehrgarh, located in what is now Pakistan, provides some of the best evidence for this crucial transition from hunting and gathering to settled agriculture in the Indus Valley region. Occupied from approximately 7,000 to 2,600 BCE, Mehrgarh represents one of the earliest known farming settlements in South Asia and offers a unique window into the development of the agricultural technologies and social practices that would later characterize the Indus Valley Civilization. The earliest levels of occupation at Mehrgarh date to around 7,000 BCE, making it roughly contemporary with the earliest farming settlements in the Middle East. The inhabitants of early Mehrgarh lived in small, rectangular houses constructed from sun-dried mud bricks, a building technique that would remain standard throughout the region for millennia. These houses were typically arranged in clusters, with narrow lanes providing access between different residential areas. The residents of Mehrgarh were among the first people in South Asia to domesticate wheat and barley, crops that had originally been domesticated in the Middle East but were adapted to local conditions through careful selection and breeding. They also domesticated local plants, including dates and melons, and developed techniques for the cultivation of cotton, which would later become one of the most important crops in the Indus Valley region. Animal domestication at Mehrgarh followed a similar pattern of gradual development and local adaptation. The earliest inhabitants kept domesticated cattle, water buffalo, sheep, and goats, all of which provided meat, milk, and hides for the community. Dogs, which had been domesticated much earlier in human history, were also present at Mehrgarh and likely served as both companions and working animals. The pottery produced at Mehrgarh demonstrates the rapid development of ceramic technology during the early agricultural period. The earliest pottery was simple and functional, made by hand without the use of a potter's wheel. Over time, however, the pottery became increasingly sophisticated, with skilled craftsmen developing new techniques for shaping and decorating their vessels. The use of the potter's wheel, which allowed for the creation of more uniform and precisely shaped vessels, was introduced at Mehrgarh around 4000 BCE. The decoration of pottery at Mehrgarh evolved from simple geometric patterns to more complex designs featuring stylized representations of animals and plants. These decorative motifs provide insights into the symbolic and religious beliefs of the community, as well as their artistic sensibilities. The consistency of certain decorative patterns across different time periods suggests the existence of shared cultural traditions that were passed down through generations. Stone tool technology at Mehrgarh was highly advanced, with craftsmen producing a wide variety of specialized implements for different purposes. Sickles for harvesting grain were made from carefully shaped stone blades set into wooden handles, while grinding stones were used to process harvested grain into flour. Stone axes and adzes were used for woodworking and construction, and various types of scrapers and knives were employed for food preparation and hide processing. The development of copper metallurgy at Mehrgarh represents another significant technological advance. The earliest evidence of copper working dates to around 4500 BCE, making Mehrgarh one of the earliest sites in South Asia to show evidence of metal technology. Initially, copper was used primarily for the production of small ornamental objects such as beads and pendants, but over time, craftsmen began to produce more practical items, including tools and weapons. The social organization of Mehrgarh appears to have been relatively egalitarian during its early phases, with little evidence of significant differences in wealth or status between different families or individuals. Houses were generally similar in size and construction, and grave goods from burials suggest that material possessions were fairly evenly distributed throughout the community. This egalitarian social structure would gradually give way to more hierarchical forms of organization as the settlement grew in size and complexity. Trade played an increasingly important role in the economy of Mehrgarh as the settlement developed. The site's location at the intersection of several natural trade routes made it an ideal center for the exchange of goods between different regions. Archaeological evidence suggests that the inhabitants of Mehrgarh traded with communities as far away as Afghanistan, Iran, and the Arabian Peninsula, exchanging local products for exotic raw materials and finished goods. The burial practices at Mehrgarh provide important insights into the religious and social beliefs of the community. The dead were typically buried in simple graves within the settlement, often accompanied by pottery vessels, tools, and personal ornaments. The consistency of burial practices over time suggests the existence of shared religious beliefs and social customs that provided continuity and stability to the community. As Mehrgarh grew and developed over the centuries, it began to exhibit many of the characteristics that would later define the great cities of the Indus Valley Civilization. The settlement was organized according to a planned layout, with distinct areas designated for different activities such as residential occupation, craft production, and storage. The development of specialized crafts and the growth of trade networks created new forms of economic organization that would serve as models for later urban centers. The decline of Mehrgarh around 2600 BCE coincided with the rise of the first true cities in the Indus Valley, suggesting that the population and resources of the settlement may have been gradually absorbed by these emerging urban centers. The technological innovations, social practices, and economic systems developed at Mehrgarh provided the foundation upon which the later Indus Valley Civilization would build its remarkable achievements. The transition from agricultural villages like Mehrgarh to the great cities of the Indus Valley represents one of the most significant developments in human history. The process was gradual and complex, involving changes in technology, social organization, and economic systems that unfolded over many generations. The end result was the creation of urban centers that were unprecedented in their size, sophistication, and level of organization. The rise of the first cities in the Indus Valley marked the beginning of a new chapter in human civilization. These urban centers, with their carefully planned layouts, sophisticated infrastructure, and complex social hierarchies, represented a fundamental departure from the village-based societies that had characterized human settlement for millennia. The emergence of cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro around 2600 BCE represented the culmination of centuries of gradual development and the beginning of what would become one of the world's most remarkable ancient civilizations. The site of Harappa, located in what is now the Punjab province of Pakistan, was among the first of the great Indus Valley cities to be discovered by modern archaeologists. The city was built on a raised platform that protected it from seasonal flooding, and its layout reflected a level of urban planning that was unprecedented in the ancient world. The city was divided into two main areas: a heavily fortified upper city that contained important public buildings, and a lower city where the majority of the population lived and worked. The upper city at Harappa was surrounded by massive walls constructed from fired brick, creating a defensible enclosure that could protect the city's most important buildings and residents in times of conflict. Within this fortified area were large public buildings, including what appears to have been a great hall or assembly building, granaries for storing surplus grain, and residential areas for the city's elite. The construction of these buildings required sophisticated knowledge of engineering and architecture, as well as the ability to coordinate the labor of large numbers of workers. The lower city at Harappa was laid out according to a grid pattern, with straight streets running north-south and east-west, intersecting at right angles to create rectangular city blocks. This planned layout was remarkable for its time and demonstrates the existence of a central authority capable of implementing and maintaining such a comprehensive urban design. The streets were paved with fired brick and included sophisticated drainage systems that carried wastewater away from residential areas. The houses in Harappa were constructed from standardized fired bricks, suggesting the existence of centralized production facilities and quality control systems. Most houses were built around central courtyards that provided light and ventilation to the interior rooms. The houses varied in size, with some containing only a few rooms, while others were much larger and more elaborate, suggesting differences in wealth and social status among the city's inhabitants. The water supply system at Harappa was remarkably sophisticated, with individual wells providing fresh water to different neighborhoods throughout the city. These wells were carefully constructed and maintained, with fired brick linings that prevented contamination and collapse. The distribution of wells throughout the city ensured that all residents had access to clean water, regardless of their social status or economic position. The drainage system at Harappa was equally impressive, with covered drains running beneath the streets to carry away wastewater and storm water. These drains were constructed from fired brick and were carefully maintained to prevent blockages and overflows. The system included manholes that allowed for inspection and cleaning, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of urban sanitation and public health. Mohenjo-daro, located in what is now the Sindh province of Pakistan, was the largest of the Indus Valley cities, and perhaps the most impressive in terms of its urban planning and architectural sophistication. Like Harappa, the city was built on a raised platform to protect it from flooding, and it was divided into upper and lower sections with distinct functions and characteristics. The upper city at Mohenjo-daro was dominated by a massive structure known as the Great Bath, which consisted of a large rectangular pool surrounded by smaller rooms and corridors. The pool was constructed from finely fitted bricks and was waterproofed with a layer of bitumen to prevent leakage. The purpose of the Great Bath has been the subject of much speculation, with some scholars suggesting it was used for religious ceremonies, while others believe it served more practical functions related to public health and hygiene. The lower city at Mohenjo-daro was laid out according to the same grid pattern used at Harappa, with straight streets dividing the city into rectangular blocks. The main street, which ran north-south through the center of the city, was over 30 feet wide and paved with fired brick. Side streets were narrower but equally well constructed, creating a comprehensive transportation network that allowed for the efficient movement of people and goods throughout the city. The houses at Mohenjo-daro were similar in design to those at Harappa, with most built around central courtyards and constructed from standardized fired bricks. The city contained examples of both modest houses with just a few rooms and elaborate mansions with dozens of rooms, multiple courtyards, and sophisticated amenities. Some of the larger houses contained private wells and bathrooms, indicating a high level of concern for personal hygiene and comfort. The industrial areas of Mohenjo-daro were carefully segregated from residential neighborhoods, with workshops and manufacturing facilities located in specific sections of the city. These areas contained evidence of various crafts and industries, including pottery production, metalworking, bead-making, and textile manufacturing. The organization of these industrial areas suggests the existence of specialized craft guilds and centralized coordination of production activities. The construction of cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro required enormous amounts of labor and resources, as well as sophisticated systems of organization and administration. The standardization of brick sizes, the uniformity of urban planning, and the coordination of large-scale construction projects all point to the existence of a powerful central authority capable of mobilizing and directing the efforts of thousands of workers. The location of these cities was carefully chosen to take advantage of natural resources and transportation networks. Both Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were located near rivers that provided water for daily use, irrigation for agriculture, and transportation routes for trade. The cities were also positioned to control important overland trade routes, allowing them to tax and regulate the movement of goods between different regions. The agricultural foundation that supported these urban centers was based on the cultivation of wheat, barley, and other crops in the fertile river valleys surrounding the cities. Sophisticated irrigation systems channeled water from rivers to agricultural fields, allowing for the intensive cultivation of crops that could support large urban populations. The surplus food produced by these agricultural systems was stored in large granaries within the cities, providing security against crop failures and enabling the support of non-agricultural specialists. The emergence of these first cities represented a fundamental transformation in human social organization. For the first time in history, large numbers of people lived in permanent settlements where they pursued specialized occupations and participated in complex economic and social systems. The development of urban civilization in the Indus Valley was a remarkable achievement that laid the foundation for all subsequent urban societies. The daily life of people living in these early cities was shaped by the rhythms of urban existence, the sounds of craftsmen at work, the movement of traders through the streets, the activities of administrators and religious leaders, and the constant flow of people and goods that characterized these bustling urban centers. The cities provided opportunities for social interaction, economic advancement, and cultural development that were simply not available in smaller agricultural settlements. The architectural achievements of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were remarkable for their time and demonstrate the high level of skill and organization achieved by Indus Valley builders. The use of standardized construction materials, the implementation of comprehensive urban planning, and the creation of sophisticated infrastructure systems all point to the existence of a mature urban civilization that was capable of remarkable achievements in engineering and architecture. The legacy of these first cities extended far beyond their immediate geographic boundaries, influencing the development of urban civilization throughout South Asia and beyond. The techniques of urban planning, construction, and administration developed in the Indus Valley cities served as models for later civilizations and contributed to the gradual spread of urban culture throughout the ancient world. As we move deeper into the story of the Indus Valley Civilization, we begin to see how these remarkable cities functioned as living communities where thousands of people lived, worked, and raised their families. The streets that once echoed with the sounds of daily life, the houses that sheltered families for generations, and the workshops where skilled craftsmen plied their trades all tell the story of a civilization that achieved unprecedented levels of urban sophistication and social organization. The experience of walking through the streets of Harappa or Mohenjo-daro 4,000 years ago would have been unlike anything that had existed before in human history. The wide, paved streets would have been filled with people going about their daily business, merchants carrying goods to market, craftsmen transporting their wares, children playing in the shade of buildings, and women drawing water from the neighborhood wells. The sounds of the city would have created a constant background hum of human activity, punctuated by the calls of merchants, the sounds of construction and craftsmanship, and the general bustle of urban life. The houses that lined these streets were marvels of ancient engineering and domestic architecture. Most were built around central courtyards that served as the heart of family life, providing a private outdoor space where families could gather, children could play, and various household activities could be carried out. These courtyards were typically surrounded by rooms that served different functions: sleeping areas, storage spaces, kitchens, and workshops, where family members might pursue various crafts or trades. The construction of these houses demonstrated remarkable attention to both functionality and comfort. The walls were built from standardized fired bricks that provided durability and insulation, while the flat roofs were constructed from wooden beams covered with layers of reed matting and mud plaster. This type of construction was well suited to the local climate, providing protection from the heat of summer and the occasional rains of winter. Many houses were equipped with private wells that provided fresh water directly to the residents, eliminating the need to carry water from distant sources. These wells were typically located in the courtyards and were constructed with fired brick linings that prevented contamination and structural collapse. The presence of private wells in so many houses indicates a high level of concern for public health and personal convenience that was remarkable for its time. The bathroom facilities in Indus Valley houses were equally impressive, with many homes containing dedicated spaces for washing and personal hygiene. These bathrooms were typically located near the courtyards and were connected to the city's sophisticated drainage system through carefully constructed drains that carried wastewater away from residential areas. The floors of these bathrooms were often paved with fired brick and sealed with bitumen to prevent water damage and maintain sanitation. The drainage system that connected individual houses to the city's infrastructure was one of the most remarkable achievements of Indus Valley urban planning. Each house was connected to a network of covered drains that ran beneath the streets, carrying away wastewater and stormwater to disposal areas outside the city. These drains were constructed from fired brick and were carefully maintained to prevent blockages and overflows. The streets themselves were marvels of ancient urban planning, laid out according to a grid system that divided the city into rectangular blocks. The main streets were wide enough to accommodate carts and other vehicles, while narrower side streets provided access to individual houses and neighborhoods. The streets were paved with fired brick and were equipped with drainage systems that prevented flooding during the monsoon season. The organization of neighborhoods within the cities reflected various social and economic factors. Wealthier families lived in larger houses with more elaborate facilities, while more modest families occupied smaller dwellings with fewer amenities. However, even the most modest houses were equipped with basic conveniences such as access to fresh water and connection to the drainage system, suggesting that the benefits of urban infrastructure were shared broadly throughout the population. The commercial areas of the cities were carefully organized to facilitate trade and commerce. Markets were located in central areas that were easily accessible from all parts of the city, while workshops and manufacturing facilities were typically located in designated industrial areas. This separation of different types of activities helped to maintain order and efficiency within the urban environment. The workshops of Indus Valley craftsmen were centers of innovation and skilled production. Potters' workshops contained kilns for firing ceramics, wheels for shaping vessels, and storage areas for clay and finished products. Metalworking shops were equipped with furnaces for melting and shaping copper and bronze, while bead-making workshops contained the specialized tools and materials needed for creating the intricate ornaments that were popular throughout the civilization. The level of specialization evident in these workshops indicates that the Indus Valley economy had developed beyond simple subsistence production to include sophisticated craft industries that produced goods for trade and export. The quality and consistency of products from these workshops suggest the existence of established traditions of craftsmanship that were passed down through generations of skilled artisans. The granaries that stored surplus grain were among the most important buildings in Indus Valley cities, providing security against crop failures and enabling the support of large urban populations. These buildings were typically located in the upper city areas and were constructed with thick walls and sophisticated ventilation systems that protected the stored grain from moisture and pests. The size and number of these granaries indicate the scale of agricultural production in the surrounding areas and the level of organization required to collect, transport, and store such large quantities of food. The administrative buildings that coordinated the activities of the city were less clearly identifiable than residential and commercial structures, but their existence is implied by the level of organization and standardization evident throughout the civilization. These buildings would have housed the officials and administrators who managed the city's infrastructure, coordinated trade activities, and maintained the complex systems that allowed such large urban populations to function effectively. The religious and ceremonial buildings of the Indus Valley cities are even more mysterious, as no clearly identifiable temples or religious structures have been definitively identified. This absence of obvious religious architecture has led to much speculation about the nature of Indus Valley religion and the role of religious authority in the civilization. Some scholars suggest that religious activities may have been conducted in private homes or in public spaces that served multiple functions. The public spaces within the cities, such as the Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro, may have served both practical and ceremonial functions. These spaces provided areas where large numbers of people could gather for various activities, whether for religious ceremonies, public meetings, or social events. The careful construction and maintenance of these spaces indicates their importance to the life of the community. The cemeteries of Indus Valley cities were typically located outside the urban areas, following practices that were common in many ancient civilizations. The burial practices revealed by archaeological excavations suggest relatively simple funeral customs, with the dead typically buried in simple graves accompanied by pottery vessels and personal ornaments. The absence of elaborate royal tombs or monumental burial structures contrasts with the practices of contemporary civilizations in Mesopotamia and Egypt. The integration of all these different elements, residential areas, commercial districts, workshops, granaries, administrative buildings, and public spaces, into a coherent urban whole represents one of the great achievements of ancient urban planning. The cities of the Indus Valley were not just collections of buildings, but carefully designed communities that provided for the needs of their inhabitants, while facilitating the complex economic and social activities that characterized urban civilization. The maintenance of these urban systems required constant attention and investment. Streets needed to be repaired, drains needed to be cleaned, buildings needed to be maintained, and the various systems that supported urban life needed to be continuously monitored and updated. The fact that these cities functioned effectively for centuries indicates the existence of sophisticated administrative systems and a high level of civic organization. The daily routines of life in these cities would have been shaped by the rhythms of urban existence. People should have awakened in their courtyard houses, drawn water from their wells, prepared meals in their kitchens, and gone about their daily work in the workshops, markets, and administrative buildings of the city. Children would have played in the streets and courtyards, learning the skills and customs that would prepare them for adult life in this urban environment. The social life of the cities would have been rich and varied, with opportunities for interaction and community building that were not available in smaller settlements. Markets would have served as centers of social activity, where people could meet, exchange news, and participate in the broader life of the community. Public spaces would have hosted various ceremonies and gatherings that brought together people from different neighborhoods and social groups. The contrast between life in these urban centers and life in the surrounding agricultural areas would have been striking. While farmers continued to live in small villages and work the land according to seasonal rhythms, city dwellers participated in a year-round economy based on craft production, trade, and services. This division of labor between urban and rural areas was one of the defining characteristics of Indus Valley Civilization and a key factor in its economic success. The relationship between the cities and their surrounding agricultural areas was based on mutual dependence and exchange. The cities provided manufactured goods, administrative services, and opportunities for trade, while the agricultural areas provided the food and raw materials that supported urban life. This relationship was maintained through systems of trade, taxation, and administration that connected urban and rural areas into a coherent economic system. The success of this urban civilization depended on the maintenance of these complex relationships and systems. The cities could only function as long as they continued to receive adequate supplies of food and raw materials from the surrounding areas, while the agricultural areas benefited from the manufactured goods and services provided by the cities. The breakdown of these relationships would eventually contribute to the decline of the civilization, but for centuries they provided the foundation for one of the world's most remarkable urban cultures. As we consider the daily life of people in these ancient cities, we are struck by the sophistication of their achievements and the complexity of their social organization. The cities of the Indus Valley were not just remarkable for their size and architectural achievements, but for the quality of life they provided to their inhabitants. The attention to public health, the provision of basic amenities, and the creation of spaces for social interaction all indicate a civilization that had developed sophisticated approaches to urban living. The legacy of these achievements extends far beyond the boundaries of the Indus Valley, influencing the development of urban civilization throughout South Asia and beyond. The techniques of urban planning, construction, and administration developed in these ancient cities provided models that would be adapted and refined by later civilizations, contributing to the gradual spread of urban culture throughout the ancient world. The story of daily life in the Indus Valley cities is ultimately the story of human beings learning to live together in large, complex communities. It is a story of innovation and adaptation, of trial and error, of the gradual development of the systems and practices that made urban civilization possible. As we continue our journey through the history of this remarkable civilization, we will see how these urban achievements were connected to broader networks of trade and cultural exchange that extended across continents and shaped the development of human civilization. The bustling streets and busy workshops of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were connected to a vast network of trade routes that extended across the ancient world. The merchants of the Indus Valley carried their goods along rivers and overland routes, establishing commercial relationships with civilizations as distant as Mesopotamia and Central Asia. These trade networks were made possible by the development of sophisticated systems of measurement, standardized weights and measures, and the creation of seals and symbols that facilitated commercial transactions across linguistic and cultural boundaries. The Indus Valley civilization's approach to trade was remarkably sophisticated, involving not just the exchange of goods, but the development of systems and technologies that made long-distance commerce possible. The standardization of weights and measures throughout the civilization enabled merchants to conduct business with confidence, knowing that a measure of grain or a weight of metal would be the same in every city. This standardization was enforced through the use of carefully crafted stone weights that were produced according to precise specifications and distributed throughout the civilization. The weights used in the Indus Valley followed a decimal system that was remarkably advanced for its time. The basic unit of weight was approximately 13.7 grams, and larger weights were created in multiples of this basic unit. Sets of these weights have been found in cities throughout the civilization, indicating the existence of a standardized system that was maintained across vast distances and long periods of time. The precision of these weights suggests the existence of skilled craftsmen who specialized in their production and systems of quality control that ensured their accuracy. The seals of the Indus Valley civilization represent one of the most intriguing aspects of their commercial system. These small square objects were carved from steatite, a soft stone that could be easily shaped and polished. Each seal contained a unique combination of symbols and images that served as a form of identification for individual merchants or trading organizations. The seals were used to mark goods and documents, providing a way to verify the authenticity and ownership of commercial transactions. The images on Indus Valley seals were remarkably diverse and sophisticated, featuring stylized representations of animals, plants, and geometric patterns. Many seals contained images of animals that were clearly important to the civilization, including bulls, elephants, tigers, and various types of birds. Some seals featured mythological creatures that combined elements from different animals, suggesting the existence of complex religious or symbolic beliefs that influenced commercial practices. The script that appears on many Indus Valley seals represents one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world. This system of writing, which has never been successfully deciphered, consists of approximately 400 distinct symbols that were used in various combinations to create texts of varying lengths. The script appears to have been used primarily for commercial and administrative purposes, with most examples found on seals, pottery, and other objects related to trade and governance. The study of the Indus Valley script has been hampered by the relatively small number of surviving examples and the absence of any bilingual texts that might provide clues to its meaning. The longest known Indus Valley text contains only about 20 symbols, making it difficult to identify patterns or grammatical structures that might aid in decipherment. Despite decades of study by scholars around the world, the script remains one of the great unsolved puzzles of ancient history. The commercial networks established by Indus Valley merchants extended far beyond the boundaries of the civilization itself. Archaeological evidence suggests that Indus Valley goods were traded as far west as Mesopotamia, where cylinder seals and other objects bearing Indus Valley designs have been found in cities like Ur and Babylon. To the north, trade routes extended into Central Asia, where Indus Valley merchants exchanged goods with nomadic peoples and agricultural communities in the highlands. The goods that traveled along these trade routes were diverse and valuable, reflecting the sophisticated production capabilities of Indus Valley craftsmen. Cotton textiles, which were first developed in the Indus Valley, were highly prized throughout the ancient world for their quality and comfort. The civilization's skilled metalworkers produced bronze tools and weapons that were superior to those available in many other regions, while their potters created ceramics that were both functional and beautiful. The trade in luxury goods was particularly important to the Indus Valley economy. Precious stones, including carnelian, agate, and lapis lazuli, were crafted into elaborate jewelry and decorative objects that were traded throughout the ancient world. The skill of Indus Valley bead makers was legendary, with their products found in archaeological sites from Afghanistan to the Persian Gulf. These tiny works of art required incredible precision and patience to create, with some beads featuring intricate patterns that were etched using acids derived from plants. The technology of bead making in the Indus Valley was remarkably advanced, involving multiple stages of production that required specialized knowledge and equipment. Raw materials were first selected and prepared, then shaped using various techniques including drilling, grinding, and polishing. The creation of compound beads, which featured multiple layers of different materials, demonstrated a level of technical sophistication that would not be matched in other regions for centuries. The workshops where these beads were produced have been discovered in several Indus Valley cities, containing evidence of the tools and techniques used by ancient craftsmen. Drill bits made from chert and other hard stones were used to create the tiny holes that allowed beads to be strung together, while grinding stones were used to shape and polish the finished products. The waste materials from these workshops indicate the scale of production and the importance of bead making to the local economy. The distribution of Indus Valley beads throughout the ancient world provides compelling evidence of the extent and sophistication of their trade networks. These small objects, many no larger than a grain of rice, have been found in sites across Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and the Arabian Peninsula, testament to the reach of Indus Valley merchants and the desirability of their products. The presence of these beads in such distant locations suggests that Indus Valley traders were skilled navigators and negotiators who could successfully operate in diverse cultural and linguistic environments. The organization of long-distance trade required sophisticated systems of transportation and communication. Rivers provided the primary means of transport within the Indus Valley region, with boats carrying goods along the Indus River and its tributaries. These vessels were likely similar to the traditional boats still used on South Asian rivers, with flat bottoms and flexible construction that allowed them to navigate shallow waters and seasonal variations in river levels. Overland transport was accomplished using ox carts and pack animals, with established routes connecting major cities and extending beyond the boundaries of the civilization. These routes followed natural corridors through mountains and valleys, with way stations providing rest and resupply for traveling merchants. The maintenance of these routes required cooperation between different communities and the development of systems for ensuring the safety and security of traveling traders. The ports of the Indus Valley Civilization, such as Lothal in present-day Gujarat, India, provided crucial links between river-based and maritime trade networks. These facilities were equipped with sophisticated docking systems that could accommodate vessels of various sizes and types. The port at Lothal featured a carefully engineered basin that could be filled and emptied with the tides, allowing ships to be loaded and unloaded safely, regardless of water levels. The maritime trade conducted from these ports extended across the Arabian Sea to the Persian Gulf, where Indus Valley merchants established trading posts and commercial relationships with local communities. The evidence for this maritime trade includes the discovery of Indus Valley seals and other objects in archaeological sites along the Persian Gulf coast, as well as the presence of Persian Gulf materials in Indus Valley cities. The goods that moved along these trade routes were not limited to luxury items and finished products. Raw materials, including metals, stones, and organic materials, were also important components of the trade networks. Copper from the highlands of Baluchistan, tin from Central Asia, and gold from various sources were all traded through Indus Valley commercial networks, providing the raw materials needed for the civilization's sophisticated metallurgical industries. The impact of this extensive trade network on Indus Valley society was profound and multifaceted. The wealth generated by commerce supported the development of specialized crafts and the maintenance of urban infrastructure. The exchange of goods with distant civilizations also facilitated the exchange of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices, contributing to the sophistication and dynamism of Indus Valley civilization. The commercial success of the Indus Valley civilization was built on more than just the quality of their products and the extent of their trade networks. It also depended on the development of sophisticated administrative systems that could coordinate production, manage inventory, and facilitate transactions across vast distances. The standardization of weights and measures was just one component of this administrative infrastructure, which also included systems for recording transactions, managing warehouses, and regulating trade. The role of seals in this administrative system extended beyond their use as commercial markers. They also served as a form of identification and authorization, allowing officials to verify the authenticity of documents and transactions. The diversity of seal designs suggests that they were used by different types of organizations and individuals, from individual merchants to large trading companies and government agencies. The distribution of seals throughout the civilization provides insights into the organization of trade and administration. Some seals are found in multiple cities, suggesting the existence of trading organizations that operated across regional boundaries. Others are found primarily in specific locations, indicating more localized commercial activities. The patterns of seal distribution also suggest the existence of hierarchical relationships between different trading centers and administrative units. The decline of the Indus Valley civilization's trade networks would eventually contribute to the collapse of the entire civilization. As climate change and other factors disrupted the agricultural and urban systems that supported trade, the commercial networks that had connected the civilization to the broader world began to break down. The loss of these connections isolated individual cities and regions, making them more vulnerable to local disruptions and less able to maintain the sophisticated systems that had characterized the civilization at its height. The legacy of Indus Valley trade networks extends far beyond the boundaries of the civilization itself. The techniques and systems developed by Indus Valley merchants provided models that would be adapted and refined by later civilizations throughout South Asia and beyond. The concept of standardized weights and measures, the use of seals for identification and authentication, and the development of sophisticated port facilities all became standard features of commercial systems throughout the ancient world. The study of Indus Valley trade networks also provides important insights into the nature of ancient globalization. The civilization's commercial relationships demonstrate that long-distance trade and cultural exchange were important features of human society, even in the earliest periods of urban development. The goods, ideas, and technologies that moved along these ancient trade routes helped to shape the development of human civilization across continents and cultures. As we continue our exploration of the Indus Valley civilization, we turn our attention to one of its most enigmatic and fascinating features. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro and the broader questions of religion, ritual, and social organization that it represents. This remarkable structure, unique among the public buildings of the ancient world, provides a window into aspects of Indus Valley society that remain largely mysterious despite decades of archaeological investigation. The Great Bath stands as one of the most impressive and puzzling monuments of the ancient world. Located in the citadel area of Mohenjo-Daro, this massive structure consists of a rectangular pool measuring approximately 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, and 2.4 meters deep. The pool is surrounded by a series of smaller rooms and corridors that may have served various functions related to the activities that took place there. The construction of the Great Bath demonstrates the remarkable engineering capabilities of Indus Valley builders. The pool was built using finely fitted bricks that were carefully sealed with bitumen to prevent water leakage. The floor of the pool was laid with a precise slope that directed water toward drains, while the walls were constructed with multiple layers of waterproofing materials. The entire structure was built on a foundation of carefully laid stones that provided stability and prevented settling. The water supply for the Great Bath was provided by a sophisticated system of channels and reservoirs that brought fresh water from nearby sources. The water could be drained from the pool through a series of carefully constructed outlets that carried it away to disposal areas outside the city. The engineering of this water management system demonstrates a level of hydraulic knowledge that was remarkable for its time and would not be matched in other civilizations for centuries. The purpose of the Great Bath has been the subject of extensive scholarly debate, with various theories proposed to explain its function and significance. Some scholars suggest that it was used for religious ceremonies, possibly related to ritual purification or ceremonial bathing. The emphasis on water in many later South Asian religious traditions lends support to this interpretation, as does the careful construction and prominent location of the structure. Other scholars propose that the Great Bath served more practical functions related to public health and hygiene. The sophisticated water management system and the provision of private chambers around the pool suggest that it may have been used as a public bathing facility, serving the needs of the city's residents in an era when personal hygiene was closely connected to public health. The size and capacity of the pool would have allowed it to accommodate large numbers of people simultaneously. A third interpretation suggests that the Great Bath may have served both religious and practical functions, reflecting the holistic approach to urban planning that characterized the Indus Valley Civilization. In this view, the structure represented a recognition that physical and spiritual purification were interconnected and that public facilities should serve both practical and ceremonial needs. The rooms surrounding the Great Bath provide additional clues to its function and significance. These smaller spaces were carefully constructed with plastered walls and floors, suggesting that they were used for activities that required clean, water-resistant surfaces. Some of these rooms contained small drains that connected to the main drainage system, indicating that water-related activities took place there. The presence of what appears to be a well in one of the rooms adjacent to the Great Bath suggests that fresh water was readily available for various activities. This well was constructed with the same careful attention to engineering and hygiene that characterized the main pool, with a fired brick lining and connections to the overall water management system. The location of the Great Bath within the citadel area of Mohenjo-Daro indicates its importance to the city's social and political organization. The citadel was the most heavily fortified and carefully planned area of the city, containing the most important public buildings and serving as the center of administrative and ceremonial activities. The placement of the Great Bath in this prestigious location suggests that it played a crucial role in the life of the community. The absence of similar structures in other Indus Valley cities raises interesting questions about the organization of the civilization and the role of different cities within the broader network of urban centers. While other cities contained sophisticated water management systems and public buildings, none featured a structure quite like the Great Bath. This uniqueness suggests that Mohenjo-Daro may have held a special position within the civilization, possibly serving as a regional center for certain types of religious or ceremonial activities. The social implications of the Great Bath are equally intriguing. The size and sophistication of the structure suggest that it was used by large numbers of people, possibly representing different social groups within the city. The provision of private chambers around the pool may have allowed for activities that required privacy or exclusivity, while the main pool itself was large enough to accommodate public gatherings and ceremonies. The maintenance and operation of the Great Bath would have required significant resources and organization. The complex water management system needed constant attention to prevent leaks and blockages, while the pool itself required regular cleaning and maintenance. The coordination of these activities suggests the existence of specialized personnel and administrative systems dedicated to the operation of the facility. The relationship between the Great Bath and the broader urban infrastructure of Mohenjo-Daro demonstrates the integrated approach to city planning that characterized the Indus Valley Civilization. The structure was not an isolated monument, but rather an integral part of the city's overall design, connected to the water supply and drainage systems that served the entire urban area. This integration reflects a sophisticated understanding of urban planning that treated the city as a unified system rather than a collection of separate components. The artistic and symbolic elements of the Great Bath also provide insights into Indus Valley culture and beliefs. While the structure is primarily functional in design, it also incorporates decorative elements that suggest aesthetic and symbolic considerations. The careful proportions of the pool, the precise construction of the surrounding rooms, and the overall design of the complex all reflect an attention to beauty and harmony that goes beyond mere functionality. The study of the Great Bath has also contributed to our understanding of Indus Valley religion and ritual practices. While the absence of clearly identifiable religious structures in other parts of the civilization has led to speculation about the nature of Indus Valley religion, the Great Bath provides concrete evidence of activities that may have had religious or ceremonial significance. The emphasis on water, purification, and communal activities all suggest religious practices that may have influenced later South Asian traditions. The preservation of the Great Bath through millennia of burial and weathering is itself remarkable, testament to the skill of its builders and the quality of their materials. The structure has survived earthquakes, floods, and the gradual accumulation of soil and debris that buried the city, emerging in the modern era as one of the best preserved examples of ancient hydraulic engineering. The discovery and excavation of the Great Bath by archaeologists in the 20th century marked a turning point in our understanding of the Indus Valley Civilization. The structure provided clear evidence of the sophistication and complexity of Indus Valley urban planning, challenging earlier assumptions about the development of ancient civilizations and demonstrating that remarkable achievements in engineering and architecture were not limited to the better-known civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt. The ongoing study of the Great Bath continues to yield new insights into the Indus Valley Civilization and its achievements. Modern techniques of archaeological investigation, including ground-penetrating radar and digital modeling, are revealing new details about the structure's construction and use. These investigations are helping to answer long-standing questions about the civilization while raising new questions that will guide future research. The Great Bath stands as a symbol of the Indus Valley Civilization's remarkable achievements in urban planning, engineering, and social organization. Its careful construction, sophisticated water management system, and prominent location within the city all testify to the importance of water and purification in Indus Valley society. Whether it served primarily religious, practical, or combined functions, the Great Bath represents one of the most impressive and mysterious monuments of the ancient world. As we move from the monumental achievements of public architecture to the more intimate details of daily life, we discover that the sophistication of Indus Valley civilization extended to every aspect of human experience. The clothing worn by the people, the food they ate, the tools they used, and the pastimes they enjoyed all reflected the same attention to quality and innovation that characterized their urban planning and commercial networks. The daily life of people in the Indus Valley cities was shaped by the rhythms of urban existence, but it was also enriched by the sophisticated material culture that the civilization had developed. The clothes people wore, the food they ate, the tools they used, and the entertainment they enjoyed all reflected the high level of craftsmanship and cultural development that characterized this ancient society. The clothing of the Indus Valley people was among the most advanced in the ancient world, thanks to their development of cotton cultivation and textile production. Cotton was first domesticated in the Indus Valley region, and the civilization's textile workers became skilled in all aspects of cotton processing, from the initial cultivation of the crop to the final production of finished garments. The quality of Indus Valley cotton textiles was so high that they became valuable trade goods throughout the ancient world. The process of cotton textile production in the Indus Valley involved multiple stages of processing that required specialized knowledge and equipment. The cotton bolls were first harvested from the plants, then cleaned and prepared for spinning. The spinning process itself involved the use of spindles and other tools to create thread from the raw cotton fibers. This thread was then woven into fabric using looms that were operated by skilled craftsmen. The weaving technology of the Indus Valley was remarkably sophisticated, allowing for the production of fabrics with complex patterns and designs. Archaeological evidence suggests that Indus Valley weavers were capable of creating both plain and patterned fabrics, with some examples featuring intricate geometric designs that required considerable skill to produce. The consistency and quality of these textiles indicate the existence of established traditions of craftsmanship that were passed down through generations. The dyeing of textiles was another area where Indus Valley craftsmen excelled. They developed techniques for creating a wide range of colors using natural dyes derived from plants, minerals, and other sources. The most famous of these dyes was indigo, which produced a deep blue color that was highly prized throughout the ancient world. The use of indigo in textile production was so closely associated with the Indus Valley that the dye became known by the name of the river itself. The clothing worn by Indus Valley people reflected both practical considerations and aesthetic preferences. The hot climate of the region favored light, breathable fabrics that provided protection from the sun while allowing for comfort and mobility. Cotton was ideally suited to these requirements, and the skill of Indus Valley textile workers ensured that the clothing was both functional and beautiful. The styles of clothing worn in the Indus Valley can be inferred from the numerous figurines and artistic representations that have been discovered in archaeological excavations. These depictions suggest that both men and women wore draped garments that were similar in some ways to later South Asian clothing traditions. The garments appear to have been relatively simple in construction, but elegant in appearance, reflecting the aesthetic sensibilities of the civilization. The jewelry and personal ornaments worn by Indus Valley people demonstrate the same high level of craftsmanship that characterized their textile production. Archaeological excavations have revealed numerous examples of jewelry made from gold, silver, copper, and various types of stone. These ornaments were often intricately designed and skillfully crafted, reflecting both the wealth of the civilization and the artistic abilities of its craftsmen. The production of jewelry in the Indus Valley involved sophisticated techniques of metalworking and stone carving. Gold and silver were hammered into thin sheets and then shaped into various forms, including bangles, necklaces, and earrings. Precious and semi-precious stones were carefully cut and polished before being set into metal mountings. The precision and artistry of these techniques indicate the existence of highly skilled specialists who devoted their careers to the production of luxury goods. The food consumed by Indus Valley people was based on the agricultural products of the region, supplemented by hunting, fishing, and trade. The primary crops were wheat and barley, which were processed into flour and used to make bread and other baked goods. These grains were typically ground using stone querns, which were found in virtually every household in the civilization. The cooking techniques used in the Indus Valley were sophisticated and varied, involving methods such as boiling, roasting, and baking. Cooking was typically done in clay vessels over open fires, with different types of pots and pans used for different purposes. The shapes and sizes of these vessels were carefully designed to optimize their performance for specific cooking tasks. The diet of Indus Valley people was supplemented by a variety of other foods, including vegetables, fruits, and animal products. Archaeological evidence suggests that they consumed peas, lentils, sesame seeds, and dates, among other plant foods. Domesticated animals, including cattle, water buffalo, sheep, and goats, provided meat, milk, and other animal products. Fish from the rivers and Arabian Sea were also important components of the diet. The preparation and storage of food in the Indus Valley required sophisticated knowledge of food preservation and safety. Large storage jars were used to keep grains and other dry goods, while smaller vessels were used for liquids and perishable foods. The careful design of these storage containers helped to protect food from pests and spoilage, ensuring that surplus food could be preserved for use during times of scarcity. The tools used by Indus Valley people in their daily activities were remarkably sophisticated and well designed. Stone tools continued to be important for many purposes, but the civilization also developed advanced techniques for working with metals, particularly copper and bronze. These metal tools were harder and more durable than stone implements, making them ideal for tasks such as cutting, shaping, and construction. The agricultural tools used by Indus Valley farmers were specifically designed for the crops and conditions of the region. Plows were used to prepare fields for planting, while sickles were used to harvest grain crops. Threshing was accomplished using techniques that separated the grain from the chaff, and winnowing baskets were used to clean the grain for storage and consumption. The crafts and industries of the Indus Valley required specialized tools that were designed for specific tasks. Potters used wheels to shape their vessels and kilns to fire them, while metalworkers used furnaces to melt metals and various tools to shape them. Bead makers used drills to create holes in their products and grinding stones to shape and polish them. The pastimes and entertainment of Indus Valley people can be inferred from the various objects and artistic representations that have been discovered in archaeological excavations. Board games appear to have been popular, with several examples of gaming boards and pieces found in different cities. These games may have been similar to later South Asian games, such as pachisi or chess, providing entertainment and social interaction for people of all ages. Music and dance were likely important aspects of Indus Valley cultural life, though the evidence for these activities is more indirect. Various musical instruments, including drums, flutes, and stringed instruments, have been found in archaeological excavations. The presence of these instruments suggests that music was an important part of religious ceremonies, social gatherings, and daily life. The artistic traditions of the Indus Valley are reflected in the numerous sculptures, figurines, and decorative objects that have been discovered. These works of art demonstrate a high level of skill and aesthetic sophistication, with realistic representations of humans and animals, as well as abstract and geometric designs. The consistency of artistic styles across different cities and time periods suggests the existence of established traditions and schools of artistic training. The children of the Indus Valley would have grown up in an environment that was rich in learning opportunities and cultural experiences. They would have learned the skills and knowledge necessary for adult life through observation and participation in family activities. Boys might have learned the crafts practiced by their fathers, while girls might have learned domestic skills and textile production from their mothers. The education of children in the Indus Valley may have included formal instruction in reading and writing, given the evidence for a sophisticated writing system. However, the details of educational practices remain unclear due to the undeciphered nature of the Indus Valley script. The existence of standardized weights and measures suggests that mathematical knowledge was also important and may have been formally taught. The social life of Indus Valley communities was likely centered around family and neighborhood groups, with various activities bringing people together for work, celebration, and mutual support. The layout of cities, with their neighborhood wells and communal spaces, suggests that social interaction was an important aspect of daily life. Markets and workshops would have provided opportunities for people from different backgrounds to meet and exchange goods and ideas. The religious and ceremonial aspects of daily life in the Indus Valley remain largely mysterious, but they were likely important elements of community life. The Great Bath and other public structures suggest that communal activities, possibly including religious ceremonies, were regular features of urban life. The various figurines and artistic representations found in excavations may have had religious or ceremonial significance, reflecting beliefs and practices that were central to Indus Valley culture. The seasonal rhythms of agricultural life would have influenced the daily routines of both urban and rural dwellers. The timing of planting and harvesting would have determined when certain foods were available, while the monsoon rains would have affected transportation and outdoor activities. The ability to store surplus food and maintain urban infrastructure year-round was one of the key achievements that distinguished the Indus Valley Civilization from earlier societies. The health and medical practices of the Indus Valley people can be inferred from the evidence for sophisticated sanitation systems and the various tools and materials that may have been used for medical purposes. The careful attention to water supply and waste disposal in Indus Valley cities suggests an understanding of the connection between sanitation and public health that was remarkably advanced for its time. The international connections of the Indus Valley Civilization would have brought foreign influences into daily life, including new goods, ideas, and technologies. The presence of imported materials and the evidence for extensive trade networks suggest that Indus Valley people were exposed to cultural influences from across the ancient world. This cosmopolitan environment may have contributed to the dynamism and innovation that characterized the civilization. The daily life of people in the Indus Valley cities was thus characterized by a remarkable combination of sophistication and practicality. The high quality of material culture, the attention to comfort and convenience, and the integration of practical and aesthetic considerations all reflect a civilization that had achieved an exceptional level of development. The legacy of these achievements in daily life extends far beyond the boundaries of the Indus Valley, influencing the development of material culture throughout South Asia and beyond. As we consider the daily lives of these ancient people, we are struck by the similarities between their concerns and our own. Like us, they were concerned with providing for their families, maintaining their homes, pursuing their crafts, and enjoying the company of their friends and neighbors. The sophistication of their solutions to these universal human challenges is a testament to their ingenuity and creativity, and a reminder that the foundations of human civilization were laid by people who were not so different from ourselves. The question of governance and political organization in the Indus Valley Civilization presents one of the most intriguing puzzles in ancient history. Unlike the contemporary civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt, which left behind clear evidence of kings, dynasties, and hierarchical political structures, the Indus Valley Civilization appears to have functioned without the traditional markers of centralized authority. This absence of obvious royal iconography, monumental palaces, or elaborate royal tombs has led scholars to propose various theories about how this remarkable civilization was organized and governed. The absence of palaces and royal monuments in Indus Valley cities is particularly striking when compared to other ancient civilizations. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurats and palace complexes dominated the urban landscape, while in Egypt the pyramids and temples proclaimed the power and divine authority of the pharaohs. In contrast, the most prominent buildings in Indus Valley cities were utilitarian structures such as the Great Bath, granaries, and workshops. This difference suggests a fundamentally different approach to political organization and social authority. The uniformity of urban planning across the Indus Valley Civilization provides important clues about its political organization. The standardized brick sizes, consistent urban layouts, and similar infrastructure systems found in cities hundreds of miles apart suggest the existence of some form of centralized authority capable of implementing and maintaining these standards. However, the nature of this authority remains unclear, as there is no clear evidence of royal courts or administrative hierarchies. One theory suggests that the Indus Valley Civilization was organized as a confederation of city-states, each maintaining its autonomy while participating in broader networks of trade and cultural exchange. This model would explain the uniformity of material culture and urban planning, while accounting for the absence of centralized royal authority. Each city might have been governed by a council of elders, merchant guilds, or other forms of collective leadership that did not require the elaborate royal apparatus found in other civilizations. Another possibility is that the Indus Valley Civilization was organized around religious or ceremonial authority rather than secular kingship. The prominent position of structures like the Great Bath and the apparent importance of ritual and ceremony in Indus Valley culture suggest that religious leaders may have played a central role in governance. This form of organization would not necessarily require the elaborate royal iconography found in other civilizations, as authority would be derived from religious rather than political sources. The role of merchant guilds and trade organizations in Indus Valley governance is another area of scholarly speculation. The sophisticated commercial networks and standardized systems of weights and measures suggest that merchant organizations may have played an important role in coordinating economic activities across the civilization. These organizations might have evolved into forms of governance that were based on economic rather than political or religious authority. The evidence for social stratification in the Indus Valley Civilization is relatively limited compared to other ancient societies. While there are differences in house sizes and burial goods that suggest some degree of social hierarchy, these differences are not as pronounced as those found in contemporaneous civilizations. This relative egalitarianism may have been both a cause and a consequence of the civilization's unusual political organization. The administrative systems that supported the Indus Valley Civilization's complex urban and economic infrastructure must have been sophisticated, even if they were not centered on royal authority. The coordination of public works projects, the maintenance of standardized systems, and the regulation of trade all required skilled administrators and effective bureaucratic systems. The absence of obvious administrative buildings may simply reflect a different approach to governance rather than the absence of administrative systems altogether. The legal systems of the Indus Valley Civilization remain largely mysterious, as no law codes or legal documents have been clearly identified. However, the orderly nature of urban life and the sophisticated commercial systems suggest that effective legal frameworks must have existed. These systems may have been based on customary law and community consensus rather than the formal legal codes that characterized other ancient civilizations. The military organization of the Indus Valley Civilization is another area where the evidence is limited and ambiguous. While some weapons have been found in archaeological excavations, there is little evidence of large-scale military conflicts or the elaborate military hierarchies found in other civilizations. This absence of military evidence may suggest that the civilization was relatively peaceful, or that its military organization was based on different principles than those of its contemporaries. The relationship between urban and rural areas in the Indus Valley Civilization was likely crucial to its political organization. The cities were dependent on the surrounding agricultural areas for food and raw materials, while the rural areas benefited from the manufactured goods and services provided by the cities. The mechanisms for coordinating these relationships and resolving conflicts between urban and rural interests must have been important components of the civilization's governance systems. The decline of the Indus Valley Civilization may have been related to weaknesses in its political organization. The absence of strong, centralized authority may have made it difficult to coordinate responses to environmental challenges, economic disruptions, or external threats. The gradual abandonment of cities may have resulted from the breakdown of the political systems that had maintained unity and coordination across the civilization. The evidence for international relations in the Indus Valley Civilization suggests that its political organization was sophisticated enough to maintain diplomatic and commercial relationships with distant civilizations. The presence of Indus Valley goods in Mesopotamia and the evidence for sustained trade relationships indicate that the civilization was able to negotiate and maintain complex international agreements. The role of women in Indus Valley governance is another area of speculation, as the evidence is limited and open to interpretation. Some scholars have suggested that the civilization may have been more egalitarian in its treatment of women than other ancient societies, possibly including women in governance roles. However, this interpretation remains controversial and is not supported by conclusive evidence. The study of Indus Valley governance has important implications for our understanding of ancient political development. The apparent success of the civilization without traditional forms of royal authority suggests that alternative models of governance were possible in the ancient world. These alternatives may have been more sustainable and effective than the hierarchical systems that characterized other civilizations. The mystery of Indus Valley governance also highlights the limitations of archaeological evidence in understanding ancient political systems. The absence of written records that can be deciphered means that many aspects of political organization must be inferred from material remains, which may not accurately reflect the full complexity of ancient political systems. The legacy of Indus Valley governance may be seen in later South Asian political traditions, which have often emphasized consensus building and collective decision-making over autocratic rule. The panchayat system of village governance, for example, may have roots in the political traditions of the Indus Valley Civilization, though this connection remains speculative. The question of governance in the Indus Valley Civilization continues to be an active area of research and debate. New archaeological discoveries and improved methods of analysis may eventually provide more definitive answers to these questions. In the meantime, the civilization stands as a reminder that there were multiple paths to political organization in the ancient world, and that successful societies could be built on foundations other than royal authority and military power. As we consider the puzzle of Indus Valley governance, we are reminded that the absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence. The civilization's unusual political organization may simply reflect different values and priorities than those of its contemporaries. The emphasis on urban planning, public health, and commercial prosperity over royal magnificence and military conquest may represent a different vision of what a successful civilization should achieve. The expansion of the Indus Valley Civilization beyond its original heartland in the Indus River Valley represents one of the most remarkable achievements in ancient urban development. Over the course of several centuries, the civilization extended its influence across a vast area encompassing parts of present-day Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. This expansion was not merely territorial, but involved the establishment of new cities, the development of diverse regional variants, and the adaptation of Indus Valley urban planning principles to different environmental and cultural contexts. The site of Dholavira, located in the Rann of Kutch in present-day Gujarat, India, represents one of the most spectacular examples of Indus Valley urban planning adapted to challenging environmental conditions. Built in a region characterized by seasonal flooding and extreme aridity, Dholavira demonstrates the remarkable ability of Indus Valley planners to create thriving urban centers even in the most difficult environments. The city of Dholavira was constructed on a low plateau that provided natural protection from seasonal flooding while offering commanding views of the surrounding landscape. The city's layout followed the characteristic Indus Valley pattern of rectangular blocks separated by straight streets, but it was adapted to the specific topography and climate of the region. The most remarkable feature of Dholavira was its sophisticated water management system, which was even more elaborate than those found in other Indus Valley cities. The water harvesting system at Dholavira consisted of a series of reservoirs, channels, and dams that captured and stored rainwater during the brief monsoon season. These reservoirs were carved into the bedrock and lined with stone to prevent seepage, creating a reliable water supply that could sustain the city throughout the long dry season. The system included both large reservoirs for communal use and smaller tanks for individual households, demonstrating the same attention to both public and private needs that characterized other Indus Valley cities. The fortifications at Dholavira were more elaborate than those found at other Indus Valley sites, consisting of multiple walls and gates that provided protection for different sections of the city. The main fortification enclosed the upper city, which contained the most important public buildings and elite residences. A second wall protected the middle city, where most of the population lived and worked, while a third wall enclosed the lower city, which contained workshops and storage facilities. The discovery of what appears to be a large signboard at Dholavira has provided tantalizing evidence about the Indus Valley writing system. This signboard, which consists of 10 large symbols arranged in a horizontal line, may represent the longest known example of Indus Valley writing. The symbols are much larger than those typically found on seals and pottery, suggesting that they were intended to be read by large numbers of people, possibly as a form of public announcement or identification. The site of Lothal, located in present-day Gujarat, India, represents another remarkable example of Indus Valley urban planning and engineering. Built near the coast of the Arabian Sea, Lothal served as a major port and manufacturing center that connected the Indus Valley Civilization to maritime trade networks extending across the Indian Ocean. The port facilities at Lothal were among the most sophisticated in the ancient world, featuring a carefully engineered dockyard that could accommodate ships of various sizes. The dock consisted of a rectangular basin that was connected to the sea by a channel with lock gates that could regulate the flow of water and allow ships to enter and exit safely, regardless of tidal conditions. The walls of the dock were constructed from fired brick and were designed to withstand the pressure of water and the wear of constant use. The manufacturing facilities at Lothal were equally impressive, with workshops producing a wide variety of goods for both local use and export. The city was particularly famous for its bead-making industry, which produced some of the finest examples of Indus Valley craftsmanship. The workshops contained evidence of sophisticated techniques for working with a variety of materials, including gold, silver, copper, and various types of stone. The urban planning at Lothal followed the standard Indus Valley pattern of rectangular blocks and straight streets, but it was adapted to the specific needs of a port city. The residential areas were located on higher ground to protect them from flooding, while the workshops and warehouses were positioned near the port facilities for easy access to shipping. The city's drainage system was designed to handle the additional water that resulted from its coastal location and its connection to maritime trade. The site of Kalibangan, located in present-day Rajasthan, India, provides evidence of the Indus Valley Civilization's adaptation to the arid conditions of the Thar Desert. The city was built on the banks of the now dry Ghaggar-Hakra River, which may have been a major waterway during the time of the Indus Valley Civilization. The strategic location allowed the city to control trade routes between the Indus Valley heartland and the regions to the east and south. The urban planning at Kalibangan demonstrated the same principles found at other Indus Valley sites, but with adaptations to the desert environment. The city was divided into two main areas: a smaller, heavily fortified citadel and a larger lower town. The fortifications at Kalibangan were constructed from mud brick rather than the fired brick used at other sites, reflecting the scarcity of fuel for brick firing in the desert environment. The houses at Kalibangan were designed to provide protection from the intense heat and sandstorms of the desert. They featured thick walls, small windows, and flat roofs that could be used for sleeping during the hot season. Many houses included underground storage chambers that took advantage of the cooler temperatures below ground level. The water supply system relied on wells that tapped into the underground water table, demonstrating sophisticated knowledge of hydrology and well construction. The agricultural system at Kalibangan was adapted to the challenging conditions of the desert environment. Archaeological evidence suggests that the inhabitants practiced a form of flood agriculture that took advantage of seasonal flooding from the Ghaggar-Hakra River. They also developed techniques for conserving water and protecting crops from sandstorms and extreme temperatures. The discovery of fire altars at Kalibangan has provided important insights into the religious practices of the Indus Valley Civilization. These structures, which appear to have been used for ritual burning, are unique among Indus Valley sites and suggest that religious practices may have varied between different regions of the civilization. The altars were carefully constructed from fired brick and were located in prominent positions within the city. The expansion of the Indus Valley Civilization also extended northward into the mountainous regions of Afghanistan and Pakistan. Sites such as Shortugai, located in northern Afghanistan, demonstrate the civilization's ability to establish outposts in regions that were far removed from the main centers of population. These northern sites were likely established to control trade routes and access to raw materials such as lapis lazuli and other precious stones. The site of Shortugai was located along the Amu Darya River, which provided access to Central Asian trade networks. The city was much smaller than the major urban centers of the Indus Valley, but it followed the same principles of urban planning and construction. The presence of characteristic Indus Valley artifacts, including seals and pottery, confirms the connection between this distant outpost and the civilization's heartland. The establishment of sites like Shortugai required sophisticated logistical capabilities and administrative systems. The transportation of goods, people, and ideas across such vast distances would have required careful planning and coordination. The maintenance of communication and control over such distant territories suggests that the Indus Valley Civilization possessed organizational capabilities that were remarkable for their time. The diversity of environmental conditions across the expanded territory of the Indus Valley Civilization led to the development of regional variations in material culture and urban planning. While the basic principles of Indus Valley Civilization remained consistent, local adaptations reflected the specific challenges and opportunities of different regions. This flexibility and adaptability may have been one of the keys to the civilization's success and longevity. The trade networks that connected these diverse sites were crucial to the functioning of the expanded civilization. Goods and raw materials flowed between different regions, allowing each area to specialize in the production of particular items while remaining connected to the broader economic system. The standardization of weights and measures across this vast territory facilitated trade and economic integration. The cultural exchange that resulted from this expansion enriched the civilization as a whole. Ideas, technologies, and artistic styles spread between different regions, creating a dynamic and innovative culture that was constantly evolving and adapting. The synthesis of different regional traditions may have contributed to the sophistication and creativity that characterized Indus Valley Civilization at its peak. The administrative challenges of governing such a diverse and far-flung territory would have been enormous. The coordination of public works projects, the maintenance of standardized systems, and the regulation of trade across such vast distances required sophisticated bureaucratic and communication systems. The success of the civilization in meeting these challenges is testament to the effectiveness of its organizational and administrative capabilities. The decline of the Indus Valley Civilization affected different regions at different times and in different ways. Some sites were abandoned relatively early, while others continued to function long after the main urban centers had been deserted. This pattern suggests that the decline was a gradual process that unfolded over several centuries rather than a sudden collapse. The legacy of the expanded Indus Valley Civilization can be seen in the subsequent development of urban culture throughout South Asia. The principles of urban planning, the techniques of water management, and the systems of trade and administration developed during this period provided foundations that would influence later civilizations in the region. The study of the civilization's expansion also provides important insights into the processes of cultural diffusion and adaptation in the ancient world. The ability of the Indus Valley people to successfully establish urban centers in such diverse environments demonstrates remarkable flexibility and innovation. Their success in adapting their urban planning principles to different conditions while maintaining cultural coherence across vast distances represents one of the great achievements of ancient civilization. As we consider the expansion and diversity of the Indus Valley Civilization, we are struck by the ambitious scope of their achievements. The establishment of cities from the Arabian Sea to the Hindu Kush Mountains, the adaptation of urban planning to diverse environments, and the creation of trade networks spanning continents all testify to the vision and capabilities of this remarkable civilization. Their success in creating unity within diversity would influence the development of South Asian civilization for millennia to come. The slow decline of the Indus Valley Civilization was not a sudden catastrophe, but rather a gradual process that unfolded over several centuries. Like the turning of seasons or the gentle erosion of riverbanks, the changes that eventually led to the abandonment of the great cities were often subtle and incremental, visible only when viewed across the long perspective of time. Understanding this decline requires us to consider multiple interconnected factors that gradually undermined the foundations upon which the civilization had been built. The climate of the Indus Valley region began to change around 2000 BCE, ushering in a period of increased aridity that would have profound consequences for the civilization's agricultural foundation. The monsoon patterns that had provided reliable seasonal rainfall for centuries became less predictable, with some years bringing devastating droughts and others producing floods that were equally destructive. This climatic instability created enormous challenges for the agricultural systems that supported the large urban populations. The evidence for this climate change comes from multiple sources, including geological studies of ancient riverbeds, analysis of pollen samples from archaeological sites, and examination of sediment cores from lakes and marshes in the region. These studies reveal a clear pattern of decreasing rainfall and increasing temperature that would have made agriculture more difficult and less reliable throughout the Indus Valley region. The impact of climate change on agriculture was compounded by changes in the river systems that had provided the foundation for Indus Valley civilization. The Ghaggar-Hakra River, which had been a major waterway supporting numerous cities and agricultural areas, began to dry up as its sources in the Himalayas were diverted by tectonic activity and changing precipitation patterns. The loss of this river would have been catastrophic for the communities that depended on it for water and transportation. The Indus River itself, while continuing to flow, also experienced changes that affected the civilization. Shifts in the river's course, possibly caused by earthquakes or gradual geological changes, would have left some cities stranded without direct access to water transportation. The silting up of harbors and the changing patterns of seasonal flooding would have disrupted the agricultural and commercial systems that had sustained the urban centers. The agricultural crisis that resulted from these environmental changes would have had cascading effects throughout the civilization. Reduced crop yields would have made it more difficult to support large urban populations, forcing people to abandon cities in search of more viable agricultural areas. The breakdown of agricultural surplus production would have undermined the economic foundation that supported specialized crafts, trade, and urban infrastructure. The response to these agricultural challenges varied across different regions of the civilization. Some communities attempted to adapt by changing their agricultural practices, developing new techniques for water conservation, or shifting to crops that were better suited to the changing climate. Others chose to migrate to areas that remained more favorable for agriculture, leading to the gradual depopulation of some regions and the concentration of population in others. The trade networks that had been crucial to the prosperity of the Indus Valley civilization also began to break down during this period. The environmental challenges that affected agriculture also disrupted transportation routes, making it more difficult and expensive to move goods between different regions. The decline in urban prosperity reduced demand for luxury goods and specialized products, further undermining the commercial networks that had connected the civilization to the broader world. The breakdown of trade relationships had particularly severe consequences for cities that had specialized in manufacturing or commerce. Communities that had depended on imported raw materials or exported finished goods found themselves cut off from their sources of supply and their markets. The loss of these economic connections forced many communities to become more self-sufficient, but this transition was often difficult and not always successful. The political and administrative systems of the Indus Valley Civilization may have been ill-equipped to deal with the challenges posed by climate change and economic disruption. The apparent absence of strong, centralized authority that might have coordinated large-scale responses to environmental challenges may have made it more difficult for the civilization to adapt to changing conditions. Individual cities and regions were left to cope with the crisis on their own, with varying degrees of success. The social fabric of Indus Valley communities was also strained by the challenges of the decline period. The economic disruption and environmental stress would have created conflicts over increasingly scarce resources. The breakdown of traditional economic relationships and social hierarchies may have led to instability and conflict within communities. The archaeological evidence for this period shows signs of declining craftsmanship and urban maintenance, suggesting that communities were struggling to maintain their previous standards of living. The technological innovations that had been characteristic of the Indus Valley Civilization also began to stagnate during the decline period. The sophisticated urban planning and engineering that had characterized the great cities required significant resources and organizational capabilities to maintain. As these resources became scarcer and organizational systems broke down, it became increasingly difficult to maintain the infrastructure that had made urban life possible. The process of urban abandonment was gradual and varied between different sites. Some cities were abandoned relatively quickly when critical resources such as water became unavailable, while others experienced a slow decline as their populations gradually drifted away in search of better opportunities. The largest cities, such as Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, appear to have been among the last to be abandoned, suggesting that they may have served as refuges for people fleeing from smaller settlements. The migration of population from abandoned urban centers led to changes in settlement patterns throughout the region. Some people moved to areas that remained favorable for agriculture, while others may have adopted more nomadic lifestyles that were better suited to the changing environmental conditions. The archaeological record shows evidence of smaller, more dispersed settlements that contrast sharply with the large urban centers of the civilization's peak period. The cultural changes that accompanied the decline of the Indus Valley Civilization were as significant as the economic and demographic changes. The sophisticated artistic traditions, standardized technologies, and complex social organizations that had characterized the civilization gradually gave way to simpler, more localized cultural patterns. The writing system appears to have fallen out of use, and the standardized systems of weights and measures that had facilitated trade were abandoned. The end of the Indus Valley Civilization was not marked by dramatic destruction or conquest, but rather by the quiet abandonment of cities and the gradual return of urban areas to agricultural or pastoral use. The great cities that had once bustled with activity slowly emptied of people, their streets growing quiet and their buildings gradually succumbing to the effects of weather and neglect. The final phases of the civilization saw the emergence of new cultural patterns that would eventually develop into the early stages of what scholars call the Vedic period in South Asian history. These new cultures incorporated some elements from the Indus Valley tradition while developing their own distinctive characteristics. The transition was gradual and complex, with regional variations that reflected the diverse ways in which different communities adapted to the changed circumstances. The lessons of the Indus Valley Civilization's decline are particularly relevant to modern concerns about climate change and environmental sustainability. The civilization's experience demonstrates how even highly sophisticated and successful societies can be vulnerable to environmental changes that undermine their economic and social foundations. The gradual nature of the decline also shows how societies can adapt and persist for considerable periods, even under challenging conditions, but also how cumulative stresses can eventually overwhelm even the most resilient systems. The study of the civilization's decline has been enhanced by modern scientific techniques that allow researchers to reconstruct ancient environmental conditions with increasing precision. Paleoclimatic studies, hydrological modeling, and other scientific approaches are providing new insights into the environmental challenges faced by the Indus Valley people and their responses to these challenges. The decline of the Indus Valley Civilization was ultimately the result of a complex interaction between environmental, economic, social, and political factors. No single cause can account for the end of such a complex and widespread civilization, but rather it was the cumulative effect of multiple stresses that gradually overwhelmed the systems that had sustained urban life for nearly 1,000 years. As we reflect on this long process of decline, we are reminded of the fragility of human achievements in the face of environmental change. The great cities that had seemed so permanent and prosperous were ultimately subject to the same natural forces that affect all human settlements. Yet the civilization's long persistence and gradual adaptation also demonstrate the resilience and creativity of human societies in the face of challenges. The end of the Indus Valley Civilization was not the end of human achievement in the region, but rather a transition to new forms of social organization and cultural expression. The legacy of the civilization's achievements would continue to influence the development of South Asian culture, even as new civilizations emerged to face their own challenges and opportunities. The echoes of the Indus Valley Civilization in the later cultures of South Asia represent one of the most intriguing aspects of the region's ancient history. While the great cities had been abandoned and the sophisticated urban culture had faded into memory, elements of the Indus Valley heritage continued to influence the peoples who inherited the landscapes where the ancient civilization had flourished. These echoes can be found in the religious practices, technological traditions, and cultural patterns that emerged during what scholars call the Vedic period, which began to take shape around 1500 BCE. The Vedic period is named after the Vedas, a collection of religious texts that represent some of the earliest surviving literature from South Asia. These texts, composed in Sanskrit and preserved through oral tradition for many centuries before being written down, describe the beliefs, practices, and social organization of the peoples who lived in the Indus Valley region after the decline of the urban civilization. While the Vedic texts do not directly mention the Indus Valley cities, they contain numerous elements that may reflect the influence of the earlier civilization. The religious traditions described in the Vedic texts show several striking parallels with the religious practices that may have existed in the Indus Valley Civilization. The emphasis on ritual purification, the importance of water in religious ceremonies, and the veneration of certain animals all echo themes that appear to have been important in Indus Valley culture. The famous Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, with its emphasis on ritual bathing, finds parallels in the Vedic emphasis on purification through water. The cult of the bull, which appears to have been important in Indus Valley religion, based on the numerous representations of bulls on seals and other artifacts, continued to be significant in Vedic religion. The bull was associated with several important Vedic deities, and the sacrifice of bulls was a central element in many Vedic rituals. This continuity suggests that some religious traditions may have been transmitted from the Indus Valley period into the Vedic period, even if the specific forms of worship changed. The practice of yoga and meditation, which would later become central to South Asian religious traditions, may also have roots in the Indus Valley period. Several seals from the civilization depict figures in what appear to be yogic poses, suggesting that contemplative practices may have been known to the Indus Valley people. The development of these practices in later periods may represent a continuation and elaboration of traditions that began during the urban phase of the civilization. The technological traditions of the Indus Valley Civilization also left their mark on later cultures in the region. The techniques of cotton cultivation and textile production that had been developed during the Indus Valley period continued to be practiced and refined by later peoples. The sophisticated knowledge of hydraulic engineering and water management that had characterized the urban centers was adapted to different conditions and needs in the post-urban period. The metallurgical techniques developed during the Indus Valley period, particularly the working of copper and bronze, provided a foundation for later developments in metal technology. The knowledge of mining, smelting, and metalworking that had been accumulated over centuries of practice wasn't lost with the abandonment of the cities, but continued to be transmitted through craftsmen and their apprentices. The agricultural practices that had supported the Indus Valley Civilization were also adapted and continued by later peoples. The cultivation of wheat, barley, and other crops that had been domesticated during the early phases of the civilization remained important elements of the regional economy. The techniques of irrigation and field management that had been developed to support urban populations were modified to serve the needs of smaller, more dispersed agricultural communities. The urban planning principles that had made the Indus Valley cities so remarkable also influenced later approaches to settlement design. While the large, planned cities of the Indus Valley period were not replicated in the immediately following periods, the concepts of organized layout, sanitation systems, and public amenities continued to influence how communities were organized. These principles would eventually be revived and elaborated in later periods of South Asian urban development. The craft traditions of the Indus Valley Civilization showed remarkable continuity into later periods. The techniques of pottery production, bead making, and seal carving that had reached such high levels of sophistication during the urban period continued to be practiced, though often in simplified forms. The artistic motifs and decorative patterns that had characterized Indus Valley crafts can be traced through subsequent periods, showing how aesthetic traditions were transmitted across cultural boundaries. The trading networks that had connected the Indus Valley Civilization to distant regions were partially maintained even after the decline of the urban centers. While the scale and sophistication of these networks was reduced, the basic routes and relationships that had been established during the Indus Valley period continued to facilitate exchange between different regions. The knowledge of navigation, geography, and commercial practices accumulated during the urban period provided a foundation for later trading activities. The linguistic legacy of the Indus Valley Civilization remains one of the most mysterious aspects of its influence on later cultures. The undeciphered Indus Valley script makes it impossible to determine what language or languages were spoken by the urban populations, but some scholars have suggested that elements of the Indus Valley languages may have been incorporated into later linguistic traditions in the region. The social organization patterns that emerged during the Vedic period may also have been influenced by Indus Valley traditions. The emphasis on community cooperation, the organization of craft specialists, and the integration of urban and rural economies that characterized the later period may reflect adaptations of organizational principles that had been developed during the urban phase of the civilization. The astronomical and mathematical knowledge that appears in later South Asian traditions may also have roots in the Indus Valley period. The sophisticated understanding of engineering and measurement that was evident in the urban centers suggests that the Indus Valley people had developed considerable knowledge in these areas. This knowledge may have been preserved and transmitted through various channels, eventually contributing to the remarkable achievements in astronomy and mathematics that characterized later South Asian culture. The influence of Indus Valley religious and philosophical traditions on later South Asian thought is particularly intriguing. The emphasis on non-violence, the importance of ritual purity, and the integration of spiritual and material concerns that characterize many South Asian religious traditions may reflect the continuing influence of ideas that first developed during the Indus Valley period. The concept of Dharma, which became central to later South Asian religious and social thought, may also have roots in Indus Valley traditions. The emphasis on social order, moral conduct, and the integration of individual and community welfare that characterizes the Dharmic traditions shows parallels with the social organization that appears to have existed in the Indus Valley cities. The archaeological evidence for continuity between the Indus Valley and Vedic periods is fragmentary but suggestive. At some sites, there is evidence of continuous occupation from the Indus Valley period through the Vedic period, with gradual changes in material culture rather than sudden breaks. These sites provide important insights into how the transition from urban to post-urban culture actually occurred. The study of genetics has also provided new insights into the connections between the Indus Valley and later populations. DNA studies of modern South Asian populations suggest that there was significant continuity between the peoples of the Indus Valley period and later inhabitants of the region, though there was also some migration and mixing of populations during the transition period. The influence of Indus Valley Civilization on later South Asian culture extends beyond specific practices and technologies to include broader approaches to social organization and cultural development. The emphasis on practical innovation, the integration of different cultural elements, and the adaptation to diverse environmental conditions that characterized the Indus Valley period continued to be important features of South Asian civilization in later periods. The legacy of the Indus Valley Civilization in later South Asian thought and practice demonstrates the remarkable durability of cultural traditions. Even when political and economic systems collapsed, and when cities were abandoned and populations dispersed, many of the fundamental insights and innovations of the civilization continued to influence human development in the region. The recognition of these continuities has important implications for our understanding of cultural change and development. It suggests that the collapse of political systems and urban centers does not necessarily mean the complete loss of cultural achievements, but rather their transformation and adaptation to new conditions and needs. As we consider the echoes of the Indus Valley Civilization in later cultures, we are reminded that human achievements are often more durable than the specific contexts in which they were created. The wisdom, skills, and insights developed by the people of the ancient cities continued to enrich human life long after those cities had been reclaimed by the earth from which they had risen. The story of these echoes is ultimately a story of human continuity and adaptation. It shows how peoples and cultures can survive dramatic changes in their circumstances, preserving what is valuable from their heritage while adapting to new challenges and opportunities. The influence of the Indus Valley Civilization on later South Asian culture is a testament to the enduring value of human creativity and innovation. The rediscovery of the Indus Valley Civilization in the modern era represents one of the most remarkable chapters in the history of archaeology. For thousands of years, the great cities lay buried beneath layers of earth and sediment, their very existence forgotten by the peoples who lived above them. The ruins that had once been bustling urban centers were gradually transformed into low mounds that served as foundations for later settlements, their true nature hidden from view and memory. The first hints of the buried civilization came not from systematic archaeological investigation, but from the practical needs of British colonial railway construction in the 19th century. Engineers building the East Indian Railway were searching for ballast material to support their tracks when they discovered that certain mounds in the Punjab contained vast quantities of well-fired bricks. These bricks, perfectly preserved after thousands of years, were ideal for railway construction, and massive quantities were removed from sites that we now know contained the remains of ancient cities. The site of Harappa was among those heavily damaged by this brick mining, with unknown amounts of archaeological evidence destroyed before scholars realized what was being lost. Local residents had been aware of the ancient bricks for generations, using them for construction and other purposes, but the scale of removal for railway construction was unprecedented. It was only when British archaeologists began to take an interest in the finds that the true significance of these sites began to be understood. The first systematic archaeological investigation of Indus Valley sites began in the 1920s under the direction of Sir John Marshall, the Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India. Marshall coordinated excavations at both Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, revealing for the first time the remarkable sophistication of the ancient urban centers. The discoveries made during these early excavations revolutionized understanding of ancient South Asian history and demonstrated that the region had been home to one of the world's earliest urban civilizations. The excavation of Mohenjo-Daro was particularly dramatic, as the site had been better preserved than Harappa and revealed the extraordinary level of urban planning that had characterized the civilization. The discovery of the Great Bath, the sophisticated drainage systems, and the standardized brick construction challenged existing assumptions about the development of ancient civilizations and demonstrated that remarkable achievements in urban planning and engineering were not limited to Mesopotamia and Egypt. The initial interpretation of the Indus Valley Civilization was heavily influenced by the archaeological theories and cultural assumptions of the early 20th century. Early scholars tended to see the civilization through the lens of contemporary discoveries in Mesopotamia and Egypt, looking for evidence of similar political and religious structures. The absence of obvious palaces, temples, and royal monuments led some to characterize the civilization as somehow deficient or less developed than its contemporaries. The development of new archaeological techniques in the latter half of the 20th century led to more sophisticated interpretations of the Indus Valley evidence. Radiocarbon dating provided more precise chronologies, while improved excavation methods revealed subtle details of construction and daily life that had been missed in earlier investigations. The recognition that different civilizations might have developed along different lines led to more nuanced interpretations of the Indus Valley evidence. The expansion of archaeological investigation beyond the original sites of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro revealed the true extent of the Indus Valley Civilization. The discovery of sites like Dholavira, Lothal, and Kalibangan demonstrated that the civilization had extended across a vast area and had successfully adapted to diverse environmental conditions. Each new site provided additional pieces of the puzzle, gradually building a more complete picture of this ancient civilization. The application of modern scientific techniques to Indus Valley archaeology has continued to yield new insights and discoveries. Ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery have revealed the locations of buried structures and helped archaeologists plan their excavations more effectively. Chemical analysis of artifacts has provided information about trade networks and manufacturing techniques, while botanical and zoological studies have revealed details about ancient diet and agriculture. The study of the Indus Valley script has been revolutionized by computer analysis and digital databases that allow scholars to search for patterns and relationships across large numbers of inscriptions. While the script remains undeciphered, these new analytical tools have provided fresh insights into its structure and possible meaning. The creation of comprehensive catalogues of Indus Valley inscriptions has made it possible for scholars around the world to contribute to decipherment efforts. The conservation and preservation of Indus Valley sites has become an increasingly important concern as archaeological investigation has proceeded. Many sites are threatened by development pressure, agricultural activities, and environmental changes. The Pakistani and Indian governments have worked to protect major sites, but the vast extent of the civilization means that many smaller sites remain vulnerable to destruction. The excavation of underwater sites has opened new avenues for Indus Valley research. Changes in sea level and river courses over the millennia mean that some ancient settlements are now submerged, requiring specialized techniques for investigation. The exploration of these underwater sites has provided new information about the civilization's relationship with maritime trade and coastal environments. The international character of modern Indus Valley research has brought together scholars from around the world, each contributing different perspectives and expertise. American, European, Japanese, and South Asian archaeologists have all made important contributions to our understanding of the civilization. This international cooperation has been crucial given the vast scale of the archaeological record and the complexity of the questions involved. The development of museums and public education programs has made the discoveries of Indus Valley archaeology accessible to broader audiences. The National Museum of Pakistan in Karachi, the Archaeological Museum at Harappa, and other institutions house important collections of Indus Valley artifacts and provide educational programs for students and the general public. These efforts help to ensure that the legacy of the civilization is preserved and understood by future generations. The impact of Indus Valley discoveries on our understanding of ancient history has been profound. The civilization's achievements in urban planning, water management, and craft production have demonstrated that sophisticated urban cultures developed independently in different parts of the world. The evidence from the Indus Valley has contributed to a more nuanced understanding of how civilizations develop and change over time. The ongoing discoveries at Indus Valley sites continue to surprise and inform archaeologists. New excavations regularly reveal additional details about the civilization's technology, social organization, and cultural practices. The recent discovery of what may be a dam at Dholavira, for example, has provided new insights into the civilization's hydraulic engineering capabilities. The study of the Indus Valley civilization has also contributed to the development of archaeological methods and theories. The challenges posed by the undeciphered script, the absence of obvious religious structures, and the apparent lack of centralized authority have forced archaeologists to develop new approaches to interpreting ancient cultures. These methodological innovations have been applied to the study of other ancient civilizations around the world. The digital preservation of Indus Valley archaeological data has become increasingly important as more information is gathered. Digital databases, three-dimensional models, and virtual reality reconstructions are helping to preserve archaeological information and make it accessible to researchers and the public. These digital tools are also enabling new types of analysis that would not be possible with traditional methods. The collaboration between archaeologists and specialists in other fields has enriched our understanding of the Indus Valley Civilization. Geologists have provided insights into ancient climate and environmental conditions, while linguists have contributed to efforts to decipher the script. Anthropologists have helped interpret social organization and cultural practices, while historians have placed the civilization in the broader context of ancient world history. The study of the Indus Valley Civilization has raised important questions about the nature of ancient urbanism and social complexity. The civilization's apparent success without obvious hierarchical authority has challenged traditional models of how complex societies develop and function. These insights have implications for our understanding of social organization and governance in both ancient and modern contexts. The legacy of Indus Valley archaeological discoveries extends beyond academic circles to influence popular understanding of ancient history and human achievement. The civilization's story has captured the imagination of people around the world, inspiring books, documentaries, and educational programs that bring the ancient past to life for contemporary audiences. As archaeological investigation of the Indus Valley Civilization continues, new discoveries and interpretations continue to refine our understanding of this remarkable ancient culture. Each season of excavation brings the possibility of new insights and revelations that may help solve some of the enduring mysteries of the civilization. The ongoing work ensures that the story of the Indus Valley Civilization will continue to evolve and inspire future generations of scholars and students. The legacy of the Indus Valley Civilization continues to resonate through the centuries, influencing not only the archaeological understanding of the ancient world, but also contemporary discussions about urban planning, environmental sustainability, and social organization. As we reflect on the achievements of this remarkable civilization, we are struck by both its specific historical significance and its broader relevance to the human experience. The urban planning innovations of the Indus Valley Civilization have provided inspiration for modern city planners and architects. The civilization's emphasis on public health, sanitation, and equitable access to urban amenities offers models that remain relevant today. The sophisticated water management systems, the attention to drainage and waste disposal, and the integration of residential and commercial areas all demonstrate principles that continue to influence contemporary urban design. The environmental lessons of the Indus Valley Civilization are particularly relevant in an era of climate change and environmental challenge. The civilization's ultimate vulnerability to environmental change serves as a reminder of the importance of building resilience into human systems and institutions. At the same time, The civilization's long success in adapting to challenging environmental conditions demonstrates the potential for human societies to thrive even under difficult circumstances. The social organization of the Indus Valley Civilization, with its apparent emphasis on collective welfare and relatively egalitarian distribution of resources, offers insights into alternative models of social organization. The civilization's success, without obvious hierarchical authority, challenges conventional assumptions about the necessity of centralized power for social coordination and urban governance. The technological achievements of the Indus Valley Civilization continue to inspire innovation and development. The precision of their manufacturing techniques, the sophistication of their measurement systems, and the quality of their craftsmanship demonstrate the potential for human creativity and skill. The civilization's innovations in metallurgy, textile production, and hydraulic engineering provided foundations that influenced technological development for centuries. The cultural contributions of the Indus Valley Civilization, while often difficult to trace directly, appear to have enriched the broader development of South Asian civilization. The artistic motifs, religious practices, and social customs that may have originated during the Indus Valley period continued to influence cultural development long after the urban centers had been abandoned. The mystery of the Indus Valley script continues to fascinate scholars and the general public alike. The challenge of decipherment has inspired new approaches to understanding ancient writing systems and has contributed to the development of computational linguistics and pattern recognition techniques. The eventual decipherment of the script, if it is achieved, may provide revolutionary insights into the civilization's history, beliefs, and social organization. The international character of Indus Valley trade networks demonstrates the early development of globalization and cultural exchange. The civilization's successful integration into broader networks of communication and commerce provides lessons about the benefits and challenges of international engagement. The standardization of weights and measures across vast distances offers models for international cooperation and coordination. The peaceful character of the Indus Valley Civilization, as suggested by the relative absence of weapons and fortifications at many sites, offers hope for the possibility of non-violent approaches to conflict resolution and social organization. While the evidence for this peaceful character is not definitive, the apparent success of the civilization without extensive militarization suggests that alternative approaches to security and defense may be possible. The educational value of studying the Indus Valley Civilization extends beyond its specific historical significance to include broader lessons about human creativity, adaptation, and achievement. The civilization's story demonstrates the potential for human societies to achieve remarkable things when they combine practical innovation with social cooperation and environmental awareness. The preservation and protection of Indus Valley archaeological sites remains an ongoing challenge and responsibility. These sites represent irreplaceable records of human achievement and innovation that must be protected for future generations. The development of sustainable tourism, educational programs, and conservation strategies is essential for ensuring that the legacy of the civilization is preserved. The continuing archaeological investigation of Indus Valley sites ensures that our understanding of the civilization will continue to evolve and deepen. New discoveries and analytical techniques regularly provide fresh insights into ancient life and culture. The application of emerging technologies such as DNA analysis, advanced dating techniques, and digital modeling promises to reveal new dimensions of the civilization's story. The story of the Indus Valley Civilization ultimately speaks to the enduring human capacity for innovation, cooperation, and achievement. Despite the challenges they faced and the ultimate decline of their urban centers, the people of the Indus Valley created something remarkable and lasting. Their achievements in urban planning, technology, and social organization enriched human civilization and continue to inspire us today. As we conclude our journey through the history of the Indus Valley Civilization, we are reminded that the past is never truly past. The achievements and insights of ancient peoples continue to influence and inform contemporary life in ways both obvious and subtle. The story of the Indus Valley Civilization is ultimately our story, part of the long human journey toward understanding, cooperation, and the creation of better ways of living together on this earth. The great cities that once stood along the Indus River and its tributaries have long since crumbled back into the earth from which they were built. But their legacy lives on in the principles they embodied and the innovations they pioneered. In their commitment to public health, their attention to environmental sustainability, their skill in craftsmanship, and their apparent success in creating inclusive urban communities, the people of the Indus Valley left us a heritage of wisdom and achievement that continues to enrich human civilization. As night settles over the archaeological sites where these ancient cities once flourished, the same stars that guided Indus Valley traders along their trade routes continue to shine down on the buried ruins. The winds that blow across the excavated streets and through the doorways of ancient houses carry with them the whispered memories of a civilization that achieved greatness not through conquest and domination, but through innovation, cooperation, and the patient work of building communities where people could live together in harmony and prosperity. The silence that now envelops these ancient places is profound and peaceful, broken only by the distant call of night birds and the gentle rustle of grass growing over walls that once echoed with the voices of children at play, merchants calling their wares, and craftsmen at their work. In this quietude, we can almost hear the echoes of those ancient voices, speaking across the millennia to remind us of what human beings can achieve when they work together with vision, skill, and dedication to the common good. The mystery that still surrounds so many aspects of the Indus Valley Civilization adds to its enduring fascination. The undeciphered script continues to guard its secrets. The exact nature of their religious beliefs remains elusive, and the details of their political organization continue to puzzle scholars. Yet perhaps this mystery is itself part of the civilization's gift to us, reminding us that there is always more to discover, more to understand, and more to learn from the wisdom of the past. The people who built these cities, who devised their ingenious water systems, who crafted their beautiful seals and jewelry, who established their far-reaching trade networks, were not so different from ourselves. They faced many of the same challenges we face today: how to live together in large communities, how to manage scarce resources, how to adapt to environmental change, how to balance individual needs with collective welfare. Their solutions were not perfect, and their civilization eventually faced challenges it could not overcome. But their achievements remain as testimony to human ingenuity and the possibility of creating societies that prioritize the well-being of all their members. As we drift toward sleep, we can take comfort in the knowledge that the human story continues, enriched by the contributions of all those who came before us. The farmers who first learned to coax grain from the soil, the engineers who designed the first urban water systems, the craftsmen who created beauty from simple materials, the traders who connected distant lands through networks of exchange. All of these ancient people contributed to the foundation upon which our own civilization rests. The great wheel of time continues to turn, carrying us forward into an uncertain future, but the lessons of the past provide guidance and inspiration for the journey ahead. In the careful urban planning of the Indus Valley cities, we find principles that can guide our own efforts to create sustainable communities. In their apparent emphasis on collective welfare, we find models for more equitable forms of social organization. In their technological innovations, we find inspiration for our own attempts to solve the challenges of contemporary life. The story of the Indus Valley Civilization is ultimately a story of hope. Hope that human beings can create something beautiful and lasting. Hope that we can learn to live in harmony with our environment. Hope that we can build communities that nurture and sustain all their members. As the night deepens and sleep approaches, we can carry this hope with us, knowing that the human capacity for achievement and cooperation continues to flourish, just as it did along the banks of the ancient Indus River 4,000 years ago. The gentle rhythm of our breathing mirrors the eternal rhythm of the rivers that sustained those ancient cities, flowing ever onward toward the sea, carrying with them the accumulated wisdom of ages. In sleep, we join that ancient flow, our dreams, perhaps, touching the dreams of those who lived and loved and built their lives along the banks of the great river so long ago. Rest now, knowing that you are part of an ancient and continuing story, heir to the achievements of countless generations who faced their challenges with courage and creativity, and who left behind a legacy of wisdom and accomplishment that continues to enrich human life. The story of the Indus Valley Civilization lives on in the continuing human journey toward understanding, cooperation, and the creation of a better world for all. In the peaceful darkness, the ancient cities rest beneath their covering of earth and time, but their spirit lives on in every act of human creativity, every effort to build community, every attempt to create something beautiful and lasting. Sleep well, carrying with you the quiet strength and enduring hope of those who came before us, and who showed us what is possible when human beings work together with wisdom, skill, and dedication to the common good. The stars continue their ancient watch over the silent ruins, guardians of memory and keepers of hope, reminding us that though civilizations may rise and fall, the human spirit of innovation and cooperation continues eternal, flowing like a great river toward destinations we cannot yet imagine, but which, with wisdom and dedication, we may yet achieve together.